We have a Coppola questions before we move on.
I don't really have a whole lot. I feel like they wrapped up the story pretty well. Most of mine's just kind of like, I just wonder what they were trying to show. Like, do you guys think that the family, like, still exists? Like, did they actually become a part of this entity and now they're living through this worm world on another planet? Or
I didn't think of that.
Like they absorbed the consciousness?
Yeah, that would make sense. I thought it was more, like I said, they were just, time was replaying itself from the past / Ward was going crazy and thinking that Nathan was still attacking him when he really wasn't, because he's, I don't know, but that would also make sense given what we know of this thing absorbing people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's actually a good question.
They're just now part of it. Because it did suck up, it absorbed, like, at least we saw it directly absorb Benny and Lavinia.
Yeah.
It mutated the others, but it pulled them in. And, like, she had that connection with it. Like, she had the rune carved on her forehead that morphed into, like, this weird statuesque thing on the home planet in that vision that we see, which was one of my questions. Like, what was up with that? Like, was that... there's clearly some link between her witchcraft and whatever this thing is because of that. Like, she was driven to draw this thing on her forehead. That's what I figured it was telling us.
I think they wanted to leave it with more questions than answers about what all that stuff was,
which is very Lovecraftian.
A
lot of why his horror works really well is, like, it's not explained, which is creepy and unsettling in a way that just having creepy, unsettling things happen doesn't match. But the unexplainable and the unexplained, I guess, creates, like, a more sense of a horror than if you just saw what was going on and everything was laid out perfectly at the end, which I'm kind of glad they did. I was kind of upset that they were showing as much as they showed with, like, it's an alien creature trying to make this look like its home world and stuff, because, like, none of that is explained in the original story again. And I think what I like about the story is that they don't explain that. It's just this thing crashes onto the farm and all this weird shit happens. And then that's it. Like, that's the only explanation you get. You don't get an explanation of why it's going, why this is happening, aside from alien radiation or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think they did a really good job trying to adapt it into something that a modern audience might enjoy, because if you try to leave an audience with that, they may just be like, well, what the fuck? Like, nothing was explained in the stupid movie.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people probably said that, even with this, where they did answer most all of the questions, they just kind of left you with, a few kind of like, well, what is that? What's that supposed to mean?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah. What do you think happened to the creatures that made it out of this crater? Like, some of the creatures must have survived. Like the horse. The horse was running down the road. Wasn't turned inside out at that point, at least. Do you think that these creatures live on after?
Maybe they keep spreading the color to different places that they go to.
Yeah.
Like, it lives on and continues to erupt, because we saw it come from the alpacas out and hit Mom and Jack.
Yeah.
Or Teresa and Jack. So maybe what was the horse's name? Comet?
Comet, that's
Comet,
right.
Would continue to mutate eventually, and then light would shoot out of him to some other animal or some other person and continue the infection.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think would happen.
So the hell beast creature that they found, that the sheriff found, that was like the bat or the birds and the cat and deer and all that kind of stuff put together, did they shoot it, or did it just naturally die because it couldn't live with all of those creatures morphed together? Because, that could be a question of, like, do these creatures eventually just die on their own?
They can't sustain themselves.
Yeah, especially when the entity itself is taken off to another planet. Maybe they no longer have power anymore.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I bet they probably just die. Because I think, like I said, I thought the whole point, or my perception of it was, or understanding is that it's drawing energy from everything around it, trying to get enough health or energy to then be able to rocket back out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think eventually they ended up dying because they don't have a way to sustain themselves. Mm-hmm. Like that energy's gone, so now they're kind of left out on their own.
Yeah. Mine again was like, what did witchcraft have to do with anything?
Same.
Like, why was she a witch? But I guess now in talking this that I realized it was creating some link between maybe the witchcraft and the events of the film. Like you said, every time she did a ritual, something happened relating to this. Like she does the ritual the first day and the meteorite crashes, and then she does the carving the symbols into her ritual, and that sort of kicks off the climax of the movie where everything steps it up a notch.
There was a bit in the behind the scenes where they talked about her doing that little ceremony at the beginning, and it being interrupted might have actually caused the meteorite to land on their property in the first place.
Yeah, because she does say, "Oh, thanks for ruining my ritual" or whatever to Ward. So yeah, that could. Yeah, and then she does when she's doing the second ritual, she's asking for protection, right? Like from whatever the thing is. So maybe that's why it grabbed her and took her, like it protected her in the way that it just absorbed her into it and not mutating her into a horrible abomination thing and then leaving with her.
Yeah.
So
well, part of her ritual is that she wanted to be taken away from this place because she hates it so much.
Right,
and she was definitely taken away from this place.
Yeah. So maybe that's what it was. It was like it took her energy to actually leave. Instead of leaving and everything else, it just turned into a horrible abomination that can't sustain itself on this planet. But maybe with her, it absorbed her into it and then took off. That's a cool little link I hadn't thought about.
Yeah.
My other question was like, why was Ezra in the movie? Like, because it's again, why do they have this weird squatter just living on their land that they don't seem to do anything about, and he just sort of lives there and that's it. It's just he just seems like because he doesn't exist in the story. In the story, it's a frame narrative, so it's the narrator telling the story, and he's relaying it from Amy Pierce or Ami Pierce, who is just an old farmer who happened to live in the valley when all this happened, because it happened like 40 years in the past. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that actually witnesses everything with the Gardner's family. He witnesses the light coming out of the sky at the end when the light sucks everything up and takes off, and then he tells the story to the narrator, I guess Ward, in this. But clearly that's why the sheriff was named Sheriff Pierce, who was named after Amy Pierce. So Ezra was a completely different character. I thought that they were adapting Amy or Ami or whatever to Ezra's character, because he's like a creepy old kook who still lives out there. But yeah, I don't really know why else he was in the story other than to deliver exposition and have that Tommy Chong cameo.
I feel like it was exposition. I don't know why there's always this trope in movies of like old hippies who did tons of acid, like somehow have all of the answers and can talk to the aliens or whatever is trying to harm them. That's something I've seen many times in movies. But yeah, I don't know exactly what the point of that was. I think they just wanted somebody to add a little bit of creep factor to the movie. Like he's 3 steps ahead of everybody throughout this whole thing. He kind of knows something crazy is going on immediately once the meteorite lands.
I guess you kind of need that for modern movies. Like you need somebody to explain something. And when you're dealing with something like this where there is no explanation that's fully spelled out, the best you can do is have a hippie guy who knows about space and the Earth, man.
Do a little drug rant of some sort.
Yeah, my only other question that we already touched on was, what was the point of having the mayor be in the movie at all?
I think just, to do the reservoir, like we have to know that reservoir is coming, and that there's conflict between her and Nathan about him selling off the land that he clearly didn't really want all that much because it reminds him of his father and stuff. And she wanted to buy it outright so that she could put this reservoir in.
It seems like that was
her just showing up when the meteorite landed. Just makes no sense. Why would the
like
mayor go?
Like that, her character was a side effect of adapting this story to take place not only in modern time but like in real time, I guess, because the original framing of it is that the narrator is a surveyor who's coming through this area long after everybody else has abandoned it because of the stuff that happened. So it's uninhabitable. So he's going through just surveying the land, and he happens to meet up with Amy Pierce, who tells him this story of what happened 40 years ago. And he goes back to his superiors and it's like, yeah, some fucked up shit happened with about 40, 50 years ago, and that's why everything's gray and nothing grows there, but go ahead and build your reservoir. And then that's where they do. But because this movie takes place, they wanted to include the reservoir side plot, but also the stuff's happening during the events of the movie instead of happening 50 years ago that we're now learning about.
Yeah.
You had to sort of create that tension, I guess, or explanation between like the mayor wanting to create the reservoir and the Gardner family being the holdouts that are getting in the way of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
Just
that's true.
create some more conflict.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that really ends up going nowhere because he gets absorbed by the light, and
Right.
I bet he wishes he would have sold that damn property now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he would have sold the property, then the meteorite would have landed into the water supply immediately and just
Yeah.
really destroyed everything.
Yeah,
The whole eastern seaboard.
Yeah. So again, it makes more sense from the story's perspective originally because the reason why they want to build a reservoir here in the first place is because nobody lives here anymore because it's been destroyed in some kind of event that happened.
Yeah.
So otherwise the land's just sitting there being useless. So they're like, might as well build a reservoir on it.